As America mourned the assassination of John F. Kennedy in November 1963, many were struck by an especially poignant moment during the president's funeral. As the coffin was carried past his family, his 3-year-old son, John F. Kennedy Jr., gave a solemn salute. In that moment, Kennedy's funeral became about more than just a nation mourning its leader. It became about a son grieving for his father. But sadly, JFK Jr. would meet a tragic and untimely end of his own 36 years later. In the wake of his father's death, JFK Jr. grew up in the public eye, and from the outside, his life seemed to have the same golden touch that had made the White House into Camelot during his father's presidency. He ran a glossy political magazine called George and was considered one of America's most eligible bachelors until he married Carolyn Bessette in 1996. But by 1999, JFK Jr. was privately struggling on several fronts. For one thing, George was floundering and was expected to lose $10 million that year. For another, JFK Jr. and Carolyn were facing a challenging time in their marriage as she struggled to adjust to life in the spotlight, and they fought over whether or not to have a child together. Amid the professional and personal difficulties that JFK Jr. faced, he was set to attend the wedding of his cousin Rory, the daughter of Robert Kennedy Jr., in July. And Carolyn, despite the tension between her and her husband, agreed to join him. What's more, Carolyn also agreed to fly up in her husband's plane, despite the fact that she told several people, including a waitress, that she didn't trust JFK Jr.'s flying abilities. They took off from Essex County Airport in northern New Jersey on the evening of July 16, 1999, accompanied by Carolyn's sister, Lauren. Though a haze had moved in, it should have been an easy 200-mile journey. They planned to fly first to Martha's Vineyard to drop Lauren off, and then continue onto the Kennedy compound at Hyannis Port, Massachusetts, for Rory's wedding. But the plane never made it to Martha's Vineyard. During their short journey, something went terribly wrong, and the plane crashed into the Atlantic, killing all 3 on board. But what exactly happened up there? This is the story of JFK Jr.'s tragic plane crash, and why some think that there's more to the story than most people realize. You're listening to History Uncovered, brought to you by the digital publisher All That's Interesting, where we explore the uncharted corners of the natural world and the world past. I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Kalina Fraga.
And I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Austin Harvey.
Today, we'll be discussing the tragic plane crash that killed JFK Jr. and what was behind it.
Hello, History Uncovered listeners. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you might recall a while back we did a little bit of a crossover with another show called The Art of Crime. The Art of Crime is a history podcast about the unlikely collisions between true crime and the arts, with each season structured around a different theme. The show has a new season coming out. This time it's called Queen of Crime, Madame Tussaud in the Chamber of Horrors. The season tells 2 stories. First, it chronicles the career of Madame Tussaud, one of the most celebrated showwomen of her day, kicking off in pre-revolutionary Paris and wrapping up in Victorian London. The second story charts the evolution of the Chamber of Horrors, a showroom in her wax museum that exhibited macabre curiosities, including effigies of notorious criminals. The Art of Crime is going to use Tussaud's biography to teach you about a wide variety of topics. For example, did you know that wax modeling was used to study human anatomy for centuries? Or how about the fact that Tussaud's wax museum played a crucial role in the outbreak of the French Revolution? Or that Tussaud made a bust of Napoleon by coating his face in plaster and sticking straws up his nostrils. You might have seen a similar thing done in cartoons or TV shows at some point. Turns out, that's based in real history. As you follow Tussaud from Paris to London, you'll see why women dominated the business of wax modeling in England, what it was like to travel in a 19th century stagecoach, and how Tussaud got swept up in one of the most heated Victorian debates about the ethics of true crime entertainment. Subscribe to The Art of Crime wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow The Art of Crime on Instagram, Facebook, and X.
JFK Jr. is the only son of President Kennedy, so naturally people paid a lot of attention to him during his life, what he was doing. He's in tabloids, who he was dating, all these things. And he seemed to have it all, but there was some stuff going on behind the scenes in the days leading up to his death. So he had founded this magazine called George, which was sort of a glossy politics magazine, but it wasn't doing very well.
Named George for like George Washington?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
He was set to lose $10 million in 1999, or the magazine was. He'd been married for only 3 years, and he'd married a woman who was not from the world of politics or celebrity or anything. She was a publicist for Calvin Klein, named Carolyn Bessette, and she was having a hard time adjusting to like his life.
Yeah, sure.
Just the scrutiny of his life. So she often felt that like the paparazzi wouldn't leave her alone. She couldn't leave their apartment. So not only was that difficult, but JFK Jr. wanted children. He was 36 at the time and she was 33. And she wasn't sure about it because she didn't want to bring a child into what she called the fishbowl of their lives. But he'd grown up with it, so it was just normal for him. And they were just like at an impasse with that. And he told a friend that it's becoming impossible to talk about things. They've become strangers and they might be headed for divorce.
Wow.
Yeah. So things weren't looking too great for him professionally or personally. In 99, they were living apart and kind of like to add insult to injury, he'd fractured his ankle in a paragliding accident. So he had a big cast for a good part of the summer. And yeah. So anyway, things are kind of like not going great this year, 99. In July, he's supposed to go to his cousin's wedding, his cousin Rory, who's RFK's daughter.
Huh?
And he had a lot of children, RFK. But anyway, Carolyn's sister, Lauren, is trying to get them to like talk to each other. So she invites them both to lunch and she encourages Carolyn to go with JFK Jr. to this event, to Rory's wedding in Hyannis Port, which is like the Kennedy estate.
Yeah.
And Lauren says, she'll even like come along for the journey. And so Carolyn agrees. They decide to get there by small plane, JFK's plane, because he's been learning how to fly.
Oh, okay. So, right. When we went into this, I just assumed it was like a not him flying it kind of situation.
Oh, no, he's flying it. He's the pilot.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it's a small plane. So their plan was they would fly from New Jersey to Martha's Vineyard, drop Lauren off, and then continue on to Hyannis Port in Massachusetts.
Wow.
That's the plan. So they have scheduled this flight for the night of July 16th. The day before, he has his ankle cast removed, but his is still a bit like tender. He used to walk with crutches or a cane, so it's not like entirely healed, but he doesn't have the cast anymore. So they all arrive at the airport on July 16th. JFK Jr. and Lauren get there a bit earlier than Carolyn. And at the time, it's July. It's like the sky is like pretty clear, but there's this haze moving in. And later, retrospect is, or not retrospect.
Hindsight.
Thank you.
or
hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
Retrospectively, hindsight is 2020. And this other pilot at the same airport spoke to a lot of the media in the aftermath of this event. And he said that he canceled his flight because of this haze moving in. He said, it was a little bit hazy for me to fly over water. You can have a really clear day, and then the fog just rolls in a matter of minutes. But JFK Jr. was still somewhat of a novice. He had his pilot's license and 300 hours of experience, but he was still short of getting his instrument rating certification. So still new-ish. And actually, one of his instructors had offered to go to fly up with him, but JFK Jr. said, no, it's fine. He could do it alone.
Famous last words.
Yes. There was also like chatter that his wife, Carolyn, did not really trust him as a pilot. But JFK Jr. was always like, no, she loves it as much as I do. So no, it's kind of hard to know the truth. But apparently she told like a waitress at a small airport once, like she doesn't trust him as a pilot. So that's no good. So their plane takes off at 8:38. About almost an hour later, they've reached Westerly, Rhode Island, and they're at an altitude of 2,500 feet and near Martha's Vineyard. So they're kind of coming into like where they would descend. But instead, as investigators saw from radar later, the plane just starts to drop. In 30 seconds, it drops from 2,500 feet to 1,800 feet, which means it drops 700 feet very quickly. And it's kind of plummeting down at a rate of more than 50 miles an hour, which experts later said is more like a dive than a descent. And it's so dramatic that even a pilot who had a lot more experience would have some trouble, righting things. And he didn't make a distress call. So it sort of seems like things happened very, very quickly, too quickly to stop. Of course, at the time, nobody knows that. And so the Kennedy family is waiting for them to show up at Hyannis Port. And when they don't, they call the Coast Guard around 2:15 in the morning. And the search begins a few hours later at 4 a.m. But it's pretty clear from early on that like things are not
Yeah, he didn't
good.
just decide to take the scenic route.
Right. Especially because the next day, debris from the plane washes up in Martha's Vineyard. It's a headrest, a suitcase, and one of Lauren Bessette's business cards. So definitely doesn't look good.
Yeah.
And the Coast Guard at the time is like, yeah, this evidence doesn't look good. You know, you never give up hope. We're supposed to start looking, but definitely didn't look good. The next day, more debris washes up. And on July 20th, they're finally able to find the fuselage at a depth of more than 100 feet in the water. So also not good. And the day after that, they find the bodies of JFK Jr., Carolyn, and Lauren still strapped to their seats. So plane went down.
Wow.
Really tragic.
Yeah, there was no hope then if they were still... They probably, I'd imagine, if you're falling that quickly, lost consciousness.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's best case scenario, I guess, huh?
Yeah, so it's just like kind of another horrible tragedy for the Kennedy family. And of course, yeah, there's talk then, Kennedy curse and everything. And yeah, very, very tragic. So they investigate the crash, and this is like the official reason behind it. According to the National Transportation Safety Board, they say the crash is due to pilot error.
Well, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not surprising.
Shocker.
Yeah. They say that he was inexperienced, he was unprepared for the conditions, he was not able to maintain control of the airplane during a descent over water at night. One investigator told the media later that he was still so inexperienced he had trouble remembering which instruments were which on the plane dashboard. And the Boston Globe, for the 20th anniversary of the crash, wrote that they say the series of decisions he made that night, flying a complex aircraft without a flight plan, choosing not to have his flight instructor accompany him in marginal weather conditions, and piloting an airplane with a foot injury have grown in significance.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is just a series of like not good decisions, kind of driven by like a little bit of hubris, maybe like overconfidence there.
That's what investigators basically said, is he was an overconfident pilot and he thought he could handle the plane, the weather, like flying at night.
Yeah.
Everything. So that's the official version. In the years since,
because anytime you say that's the official version, I know the next thing is going to be a bunch of ridiculous theories that other people have
there's
had.
Quite a few theories about this. Probably the most, they're all kind of like sinister theories. One of the theories, which has I have to emphasize, has like no evidence really, is that this was some sort of murder-suicide.
Right.
That his marriage is falling apart, his magazine was falling apart, and he decided to kill himself and his wife and his sister-in-law by crashing the plane.
Right.
One of his friends said that the only reason like this narrative exists at all is because they were having they were in a rough patch.
Yeah.
But in a couple of weeks, it could have cleared up, and then it would have been a totally different story. In
a weird way, it almost like was a murder-suicide accidentally. So I guess manslaughter suicide.
Yeah.
Because maybe like all of these bad things going on in his life are part of what caused him to lean into that overconfidence in his flying ability.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that being the case. It's like, oh, my marriage isn't really going well. My magazine's not doing well, but damn it, I can fly.
Yeah, maybe
that
so.
one thing you
yeah.
have control over.
Yeah.
That's just speculation on my part, though.
It's a point. Or just being kind of like, I don't know, like whatever, like it's fine. Not really like putting too much.
Just kind of so over things going wrong that you're like, it's.
Just get in the plane and go and just like, So that's one theory. Another theory is that he was murdered because
of course.
he was apparently obsessed with his father's assassination, which like, wouldn't you be too?
Well, yeah.
He was like maybe going to use his own money to try to investigate the assassination. And then, so this theory is like, so someone killed him then to like make sure that the truth never got out.
Right. I will say the fact that Robert Kennedy Jr. is still alive kind of throws that one in the wastebasket, because he also like strongly like support conspiracy theories about his father and his uncle.
Yeah, I think that when we did the podcast on the JFK assassination, he came up because he'd supported some theory about RFK Jr. had supported some theory about someone being involved.
Yeah, he supports a lot of conspiracy theories, but
he does.
Yeah. But like, point being, if someone realistically was worried about the truth about the Kennedy assassinations getting out, Robert Kennedy would probably be a little bit of a pain in the ass for that because he's out there saying all these things.
Plus, it seems like if you've successfully pulled off this assassination and gotten this other guy framed, which is all very risky to do.
Right.
You're going to do that again with another member of the family and just
well, if we did it once,
either you're the best, I don't know, even assassin in the world or.
Right.
So those are kind of the more sinister ones. The more ridiculous theory is that he didn't die at all.
No.
He disappeared and is off living his life somewhere. And this is a theory among QAnon believers because the idea is that he is going to come back and help Donald Trump fight an evil cabal and be Donald Trump's vice president.
Right.
And when I read that, I was like, he's going to come back, the son of a president, and he's going to be Donald Trump's vice president.
Right.
That's his master plan here.
Yeah, because QAnon doesn't want anyone else to be president other than Trump. But also, if that were the case, now would be the perfect time for Trump to drop that tidbit of information. You know what I mean? Right as we're ramping up for another showdown of epic proportions between Biden and Trump, it'd be a great time to come out and be like, yeah, by the way, John F. Kennedy Jr. is alive and my running mate. Be like, well, that's certainly a way to shake things up.
Yeah, and he hasn't chosen a running mate yet, so.
Right.
Yeah, I just think that I guess I get that they're Trump is the guy and this, and JFK Jr. would be so selfless to support him for the good of America or something. But politicians.
What a weird element of that theory.
It's a very strange. So
did JFK Jr. even want to be involved with politics other than tangentially kind of writing about them?
Well, he was a lawyer, so that's not really politics, but he had a very serious, he wasn't just this editor of the magazine.
Sure.
And stuff,
I just mean he was never a senator, a congressman, governor, didn't really ever mention making a bid at the presidency. So it seems like he was not really interested in that sort of thing anyway.
He did seem like he wanted to kind of build a life and a career for himself outside of politics. But one thing about him dying so young is that people have been well, if he had lived, he would have eventually gotten into politics and he would have been the president.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. But I would also fully understand not wanting to be president if you're John F. Kennedy Jr.
Right. Yeah, definitely. But it's one of those things we'll never know.
Is RFK Jr., other than running right now, has he really had a political career either?
I don't really know.
I feel I never heard anything about him until recently when he started running for president. They list him as a politician, environmental lawyer, anti-vaccine activist, and conspiracy theorist. The fact that conspiracy theorists made it into his official Google, he has a pretty good track record of law school stuff.
Where'd he go to law school? Harvard?
Yeah, Harvard.
Yeah.
Oh, he was convicted for heroin possession in 1982.
Wow. Interesting.
That was the first part of his career section on Wikipedia, which I think is really funny.
It's interesting. So I feel he and JFK Jr. both had these really traumatic childhoods. But I think that RFK Jr. was older when his father died than JFK Jr. was. Yeah. I think he was 12 or something. So I think that in those formative years, that would have messed with your head a bit more. JFK Jr. was only 3. I don't know what he remembered really from.
Yeah. Okay. It feels unfair to call RFK Jr. a politician because from what I've quickly gleaned here, he's never actually had any role in politics other than being a Kennedy and now running as a third-party candidate.
He's doing politics. He is
doing politics, but he's never been an elected politician.
No, but neither had Donald Trump.
Yeah, but now he has. So now I would say Donald Trump's a politician. But before that, I would never have said that. I wouldn't say that about RFK Jr. now either. I would say he's trying to be a politician.
An aspiring politician.
But
yeah, I guess so. It's interesting point. Yeah. I feel he became, he's always been a name because of his last name, but I feel he became big because of the anti-vax stuff, no?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was 2020 when he started talking about the conspiracies around the COVID-19 pandemic on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's the first I really ever heard of him.
I thought that he was he was one of those vaccines cause autism types.
He might be, but he definitely ramped it up with the COVID vaccines. But he also thought the pandemic was fake and that it was like created to benefit billionaires to help get rid of the American middle class. So
interesting. Well, he didn't qualify for the last debate, and
they've also denied him Secret Service protection.
Really?
Yeah, he's been running like an ad on Twitter about needing to raise funds for private protection because they denied him security.
I wonder what the threshold you have to reach to get Secret Service protection.
Yeah, according to him, no other candidate has ever been denied it. But I was like, yeah, but you're a third party candidate and no one really thinks you're going to win. So
right. That's what I mean is like, if you're in like a crowded field, at what point are you given that protection?
Right.
Also, like he has money. I mean, his family is very
Kennedy.
wealthy.
It's not like and he was a lawyer. It's not like he's hurting for cash here. The number of steroids alone that he takes, you can tell he's fine financially.
Well, yeah, it is interesting to kind of compare the two because they had very different paths.
Yeah,
it seems.
Yeah. Normally, I wouldn't go on such a overtly political tangent on this podcast, but I mean, when you're talking about JFK Jr., you kind of have to talk about RFK as well.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. I didn't really think about that too much.
Yeah, well, especially since you said like a lot of people were like, well, maybe JFK Jr. would have gotten into politics one day, and it'd be an interesting world where both he and RFK Jr. are both politically involved. Because I don't know how much JFK Jr. would have bought into all the conspiracy stuff as well.
Impossible to say. I mean, who knows? Yeah, I think the media would have had like a field day if they were both, running for stuff.
Yeah.
He's born in 61 or 60. So he'd be like not old, but getting up there at this point if he were running. Well, we're in for an interesting election. I feel like we should do a podcast on, I don't think that anyone would really care much about this, but Grover Cleveland, who was the only, two-term non-consecutive executive.
I don't know. That could be kind of interesting to talk about later on this year, depending on which way this goes.
Yeah, as we get closer. I don't know. He had some interesting stuff happen to him. I mean, he had like a huge sex scandal when he was running, and then he married a much, much younger woman in the White House. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I believe he's the only president to ever get married at the White House.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like most of them go in married.
Yeah. It's like Wilson got married, but I don't think he got married like at the White House. Like if people who got like remarried, like their wife died or something. Right.
Why do people also ask how much did JFK Jr. weigh when he was born?
Was he like a big baby or something?
6 pounds, 3 ounces.
Oh, small baby.
Yeah.
People ask that? That's like one of the...
That was like when I Googled JFK Jr., that was like one of those like, people also ask.
That seems like small for a baby.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah. So that's that story. And it's really tragic. It just seems so avoidable.
Yeah.
And just another, like you said, another like just bad thing that happened to the Kennedy family.
Yeah. It's a bummer because of how preventable this would have been too. Just a couple like, slightly more urging of like, let's wait. Let's not fly out in this weather, or no, maybe you should have your instructor come up so that we have someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Or maybe we just board an airplane or take a train or something. But
right.
Yeah, really tragic. So we have a couple of articles about it on the site.
Over on allthat'sinteresting.com.
Yeah.
Where you can also find our newsletter, allthat'sinteresting.com/sign up. That'll be where you if you want to stay up to date with all the stuff we're putting out, news and, longer posts about a bunch of historical topics, you can find that there. You can also become a member at allthat'sinteresting.com/membership. That'll get you some bonus perks on the site, dark mode, no ads, special extended cuts of some of the podcast episodes as well, where we've kind of moved our History Happy Hour segment over to that feed. So if you like the History Happy Hour stuff, if you want to hear more of that kind of like, news roundup, historical anniversaries, and like a fun cocktail idea, that's how you're going to get that now as well.
Yeah. And as always, you can reach out to us. We love to hear from people. If you have questions, observations, ideas for future episodes or series, corrections.
Yeah.
Yes. You're welcome to send us an email at podcast@allthat'sinteresting.com, or you can even leave us a voicemail if you call the number 929-526-3029. That's always kind of thrilling when we get a voicemail and we all listen to it over Slack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting. It's always fun to hear.
It is fun to hear, yeah.
As someone who hates the idea of leaving voicemails, I understand the pain when I hear in people's voices where they like don't know how to end. I feel like that's the hard part of leaving a voicemail, right? Is like it's easy to lead in. You're like, hey, my name is blah blah blah, first time, long time. Here's my thing, and then it always just kind of ends with, so, all right, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, right. This reminds me of being in like high school, having teachers be like, "No, you're going to finish the presentation. Don't just be like, and okay."
Yeah, but it's just a phone call. You know what I mean? So it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the worst. It's like when you call like a restaurant or like you need to make an appointment somewhere, but you get the voicemail like, "Hey, my name, this is Austin Harvey. Just wanted to schedule my next check-in, my next checkup, my doctor's appointment. So yeah, give me a call back." And thanks.
And
bye. That's pretty much every
I know.
voicemail I've ever left in a nutshell right there.
I guess for appointments, I would leave a voicemail probably. But like, if someone doesn't pick up, I just hang up the phone and then I text them.
Yeah.
Or I call them later. I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, point being, if you like me also get voicemail anxiety, but you want to leave us a voicemail, know that you're seen, that you're understood, that we relate.
No judgment here.
No
We're just happy
judgment.
to get them. So
yeah, because sometimes you have the thought like maybe you're listening to this in your car and you're like, oh my god, wait, they said something. I need to say this before I lose it.
Yeah,
voicemail is probably going to be the most effective way because you don't want to be sending an email when you're driving.
That's true. No emailing while driving. We don't support that.
Right. And other things you shouldn't do while you're driving, but you should do when you get home. Find us on social media. Over on TikTok, if you want, in the middle of your doom scrolling, if you want some fun history facts, you can follow us at Real History Uncovered there, or the same thing on Instagram at History Uncovered Podcast as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're all over the place online. And we got some cool stuff coming up as well. I think Balto is next.
Balto is next, the real story and perhaps the controversy behind Balto.
Yes. There's a famous statue of Balto, of course, in Central Park.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another fact about that statue I'll bring up. I'll save it for the podcast.
Oh, boy. Oh, fun.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that then if you want to hear an interesting discussion on Balto, the hero dog who might not... it's the controversy is not really around him, though. It's like his breeder or trainer, right?
Well, it is.
Or just kind of like the whole
him.
Thing... like the whole story of
it's like
it.
Balto didn't do anything wrong, but the breeder had some unkind words to say about him.
We're not canceling Balto. Balto did not text minors or anything like that.
Nope. He did his job. It's just there was some more information about. It's not just like Balto hero. There's like more to the story.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So we'll be getting into that next time. So stay tuned if you're interested in hearing about that. Hit that little plus button, I think it is, on Apple Podcasts, and a heart on Spotify, because it's not like a subscribe button, but it is.
Oh, I don't know.
But like the one on YouTube says subscribe. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, subscribe, smash that bell icon so you get notified. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and you're not following the show and you somehow found this episode, subscribe. Check it out. We got way more. I don't even know what number this is. We're over 110 episodes at this
When
point.
did we record our 100th episode? Was that this year or
it was
it
like
last
January.
Year?
We kind of like started the new year with our 100th episode. There's plenty of backlog.
So
if
many.
This is your first episode here.
Yes.
Cool. So if you could just go do that for us. And and okay. Thanks.